Do you also sigh when you see beautiful photos on Insta? On Instagram, everything looks like it's from a catalog, and in real life, it's cold coffee and socks in the middle of the room. The biggest harm comes from our ideas about a perfect life. Breakfasts in bed, green smoothies that make themselves. You know this, right? But that's just a tiny slice. Behind the frame, there's everything else. Unspoken words, silent days, disappointments, and the ordinary everyday life that no one shows. And then you look at your own life and think, what's wrong with me? But the truth is, a relationship is not a fairy tale with a filter. It's real life. Sometimes beautiful, sometimes hard, but always worth fighting for. Hello, it's Maya outside the drama. Today we're going to talk about something that probably every one of us has gone through, is going through, or will go through. You know those expectation versus Instagram memes? Exactly. How perfectly that shows today's topic. Because today we're going to talk about expectations versus reality in relationships. You know, on Insta, everything looks like it's from a catalog. Breakfasts in bed, romantic trips, no mess, no problems. And then you look at your own life and, well, breakfast is more like cold coffee and a sandwich made in a hurry, and romance ends as soon as someone leaves socks in the middle of the room. Classic. And that's exactly what I want to talk to you about today. Where do our ideas of perfect love come from? Why is it so easy to get disappointed? And how not to go crazy when life doesn't want to fit into our Instagram feed. Make yourself a coffee, get comfortable, and let's begin. So tell me honestly, how many times have you imagined what it'll be like when you finally find the one? Or what it'll be like when you finally move in together, eat breakfast in bed, and he wakes you up with a kiss. Not the sound of an alarm clock. Sounds familiar, And then life happens, and suddenly it turns out that breakfasts in bed are nice. Until you have to clean up the crumbs from the sheets. And the alarm still rings because someone has to walk the dog. And you know what? That's completely normal. But no one tells us that when we watch romantic comedies or scroll through Instagram where everyone is so in love, so happy, so perfect. So where do these expectations come from? A bit from fairy tales, a bit from movies, a bit from what we see in others, and a bit from what we make up ourselves, because that's how it should be. And then we enter a relationship with a whole suitcase of ideas, dreams, sometimes even a list of things that he must have or she must do. And life doesn't care. Life is what it is. I remember when I used to think that once I was in a relationship, everything would fall into place. That I'd be happy, fulfilled, and every day would be like a Nutella commercial. Sunshine, smiles, zero problems. And then everyday life came. And suddenly it turned out that he doesn't always remember the anniversary. That sometimes he comes home tired and doesn't feel like talking about feelings. And me? Well, I'm not perfect either. Sometimes I get grumpy over nothing. Sometimes I don't feel like cooking. Sometimes I just want some peace and quiet. And you know what? That's okay. Really. Because a relationship isn't a movie where everything always ends with a happy ending. It's not a fairy tale where the prince always knows what to say and the princess never has a bad day. A relationship is two people who have their moods, their habits, their weaknesses. And sometimes those weaknesses clash. Sometimes it's funny. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's just ordinary. Seriously. But let's get back to those expectations, because they're what usually hurt us the most. Because once we imagine something, it's hard to let go. And we start comparing to others, to movies, to what it was at the beginning. But every relationship changes. And you know it works both ways. Because when we keep comparing, complaining that he's not like in the movies or on Insta, the other person can also feel not good enough. And that hurts because no one likes to live with the feeling that they're always failing. Often, that feeling of not being enough comes exactly when we compare everyday life to what it was at the beginning. And at the beginning, there are butterflies in your stomach. Everything is new, exciting. You want to talk until morning, text, plan your life together. And then everyday life comes. And that's normal. Seriously, you can't live on high gear all the time. Even the best car needs a service sometimes. And here comes disappointment, because suddenly it turns out he's not like you imagined. That she doesn't always feel like cuddling. That sometimes she just wants to sit in silence, and you want to talk. And what then? Exactly. That's when the real relationship begins. Because a relationship isn't about fulfilling the other person's expectations. It's a meeting of two worlds that sometimes overlap and sometimes just pass each other by. And you know what? The worst thing you can do is hold on tightly to your own ideas. Because then every difference, every not like this, every he didn't do what I wanted hurts twice as much. And no one can read minds. No one can be perfect. And you don't have to be either. I often hear from girls, he changed. At the beginning, he was so affectionate. And now? Or it used to be different. Now he doesn't care anymore. And you know what? Maybe he changed. Or maybe he just relaxed a bit because he feels comfortable with you now. Let's be honest. At the beginning, each of us plays a little, tries harder, wants to look better. But then real life comes. Because real closeness starts when you can be yourself. When you don't have to pretend you're always in a good mood. Always look like you're on a magazine cover. Always feel like having sex, talking, and cooking together. And here comes the question. How not to fall into the trap of the perfect relationship? How not to go crazy with all those Instagram pictures, all those guides that say true love is, the perfect relationship should, if he loves you then. You know what? There's no such thing as a perfect relationship. Seriously. Every relationship has its ups and downs, its better and worse days. And that's normal, okay? Sometimes it's worth just sitting down and talking. Honestly, saying what makes us happy, what annoys us, what we're missing, without complaints, without expectations, without a to-do list. Just talk. Because often it turns out the other person also has their own ideas, fears, needs. And sometimes one sentence is enough to change something. Sometimes it's enough to say, listen, I miss what we had at the beginning. Maybe we can go out together again. Do something new. Or, I know you're tired, but it would be nice if we sometimes talked about something other than bills and work. And you know what? Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Because not everything can be fixed with a conversation. But it's worth trying. It's worth talking about your needs, but also listening to the other person. Because a relationship isn't just about taking, it's also about giving. It's not just he should, she should. It's us together. And one more thing, don't compare your relationship to others. Seriously, what you see on Instagram is just a slice of reality. No one posts photos of arguments about socks. No one shows what a morning looks like after a sleepless night. No one brags that sometimes they just don't feel like talking. Every relationship has its shadows and its lights. Sometimes it's worth letting go. Stop stressing, stop expecting everything to be like a fairy tale. Because life isn't a fairy tale. But that doesn't mean it can't be beautiful. Sometimes the most beautiful moments are the ordinary ones. Morning coffee together, laughing at a silly joke, hugging after a hard day. Those are the moments that build closeness. Not grand gestures, not expensive gifts, not romantic dinners, just everyday life, just being together. And finally, remember, a relationship isn't a project to complete. It's not a checklist. It's a process. It's a road where sometimes we stumble, sometimes we get lost, sometimes we come back to each other after a storm. Because the most important thing is to walk together, even if sometimes not at the same pace. So if today you feel like your expectations have crashed into reality, know that you're not alone. Every one of us goes through this. And every one of us can learn to let go, to talk, to be closer. Not perfectly, but truly. Let me know in the comments how it looks for you. Have you ever had ideas that crashed into everyday life? How do you deal with it? Maybe your story will help someone else. And if you made it to this point, write in the comments, drama off, and please subscribe to the channel. That's all for today. Take care, and remember, you don't have to be perfect to be happy. This was Outside the Drama. I'm Maya, and see you in the next episode.